Welcome
I'm
back.
not gonna.
No, look at this. Look at Dana. For those of you who are just in audio land, Dana and I have probably dropped every single curse word,
Yeah.
double digits before pressing record. I can't even, like, it's going to be a rough one, guys. It's going to be
And
a rough one.
I was making the face that reminded me of was if people know Ferris Bueller's Day Off when they're in the taxi cab and Cameron sees that the dad's in the car next to him and he goes, "Look over there." I was trying not to smile. Usually I smile when we log out. And I'm like, I'm not happy. I can't be smiling.
Okay, so Dana, I don't even.
Let's start with last week. So most people probably are aware of last week. The Trump administration has appointed RFK to, I can't even keep track. It's
He's a Health and Human Sciences, Health and Human Services Secretary.
This person that has no medical background, knows nothing about it. Anyway, so last week he did a press conference talking about they're going to find the cause of autism by September. And then he went on a diatribe about how autistic people can't work, can't pay taxes, can't play baseball, can't potty themselves. I mean, it was just
can't date. They won't date her.
Can't date.
They also won't write any poems.
Well, that one might be true for me.
By the way, that's true for me.
I suck at writing poems. But so obviously really upsetting. And it sort of sounds like a lot of other things they've talked about, which is sort of, this is a target group, and how do we, deporting people, arresting people for gender affirming care, banning trans folks, et cetera, et cetera. It starts to sound really similar to what went on in Germany in World War II, right?
Yeah.
If you're not straight, white, cis, we don't want Christian, we don't want you. So that,
and neurotypical now.
And neurotypical now. Yeah. So I was heartened over the weekend to see so much pushback, and not just from people in the autism community. A lot of online creators that are advocates and so on are like, this is complete crap. And it's, oh, well, there's one. Damn it. I was going to really try not to do that. And then a friend of mine sent me a link to a CBS story last night, of course, right before I went to bed. Bless her heart. I'm really glad she sent it to me. But apparently he had another announcement that he is going to access national medical records. So in the VA, but also people that have gotten autism diagnoses, assessment, whatever it is, through their insurance, because it becomes accessible that way. To do this massive research project that they're supposedly going to get done before September. Never mind that the last 20 years, and especially the last 10 years, has been a huge amount of autism research that's given us a lot of really good information about some genetics that they're aware of contribute to it. But even the researchers that have done that say it could be 100 plus different genes that are in combination and so on. So here you have this person that knows nothing about this, clearly, just jumping in the middle of this and saying, I'm going to be the person that finds, these wonderful answers. And from a researcher standpoint, it's so flawed, right? You and I both learned to be researchers in our doctoral programs.
Yeah.
You can find the answer you want to anything.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, that's one of the first tendencies you learn about in doing research is you can't go into it with a biased view saying, I'm going to go in this dark room and shine the flashlight just where I want to shine it. And then, of course, I can prove my hypothesis correct. Right. That's what I worry about someone like this doing with that information, that the research isn't going to be sound, even if it's done. You couldn't do it in that amount of time. It's ridiculous. The piece about marginalizing an entire group and trying to, take the clock backwards to the beginning days of Autism Speaks, when they talked about it being
Curing.
vaccine caused and a cure
curing.
mentality. So this bleeds of that. And even Autism Speaks no longer says it's caused by vaccines. They even have a statement on their website that says this is not the case. Autism Speaks, right? The evil empire. So there's the research issue with that. That's a problem. And then there's this massive private records issue, right? So many people that come to me to get assessment will self-pay because they don't want record of this anywhere on their insurance because of something like this, right? They can access, they can find out about it. They can marginalize you. So anybody that's gotten like an accommodation in school, IEP or 401 or whatever those are called, they vary from state to state.
504.
504. Thank you.
504 IEPs.
IEPs. Those are in, if those are in public schools, those are database access that he's wanting to have. I saw a really disturbing post in response to something I posted last night. Someone posted a letter they had gotten from their insurance company yesterday, nice timing, saying that they wanted this person to sign a release of information so that their daughter's chart, all the information for her autistic daughter could be accessed, and that anything in that chart would become this research's property, videos, anything. So it's going another step beyond. Like, I can use this person's information and I could identify it, right? When you research something, you go to inordinate lengths to de-identify research. It's one of the basic tenets of research. It's something you go through an institutional review board to get it looked at. You make sure things are going to stay confidential. You make sure you don't identify people, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And when did IRBs come to be? What did that arise out of? Why do we do research review before someone can do research? The Nuremberg trials. This was out of all the research that Nazi Germany did on folks. This is why we do this. It's to protect human participants, right? We don't even call them subjects anymore. We call them participants because they need to be able to actively go into research saying, yes, I consent to do this, right?
Right.
So doing something like this, I don't trust them to not, identify people. And I don't trust that they have the discipline as researchers to not use this in really evil, scary ways, right? So there's the research way, the confidentiality piece, and then the third prong of this that really upsets me is just the discourse that this is promoting about people being defective. And this is why we do the podcast. This is why you and I do the work that we do, is to lift voices and not be marginalized anymore. It's to empower. And this is completely in the opposite direction, right? A lot of people that we're seeing comments on stuff I posted last night before I went to bed, are saying things, and I feel this too. I'm exhausted. My brain hurts. My nerves feel completely shot, right? This is what this administration has done with so many issues. It's just like every day it's another poop show over and over and over, and you can't possibly attend to them all, right? Again, though, I am a little bit heartened in how fast people are getting on this that are in the community and allies of the community, whether or not they'll be able to push back enough to control it, or if this does come out with some ridiculous finding in this study, I do think there's enough pushback to defunct it pretty quickly. The question is what's going to be done in the next 3.5 years with whatever they find in September, right? It's super upsetting.
It's terrifying. Like, I feel like,
it's terrifying.
I mean, terror is probably a word that I have been overcome with.
Yeah. For you especially. Recently.
For a lot of
the fires
the fires and everything. But what did we also learn in grad school, Dana? When we're doing, right? You can ask questions in a certain way and confirm your hypothesis. The other thing we learned too is if you have enough data, you will always get significance.
Yes.
Right. All you need are numbers to show a significance. I don't know if they're going to run effect sizes versus p-values. I have no idea. In our field, effect sizes are not susceptible to the amount of people that are in a study.
Right.
And so it's kind of more, it's seen to be more, um, to be a stronger indicator of what you're researching.
Yeah.
But, in this situation, and I think to your point, can we trust that this administration is going to do things with integrity, in an organized fashion? And
Yeah.
the answer to that is, I mean, like, obviously, I mean, I don't think it's a surprise to see where Dana and I lean.
Hmm.
I don't. I'm pretty sure you're probably not listening to this podcast and not thinking about, I don't know, human rights or dignity.
Right.
I'm just
Right.
saying,
Right.
right?
Right.
Um,
Right.
but you clearly know where I think, like, it doesn't,
Where we
it's not,
stand. Yeah.
while we don't come out and talk about it like directly, I think it's pretty obvious where we fall politically, on the spectrum of things. But the other thing too that I was just, first of all, I was so offended.
Hmm.
When I heard these things, I was like, what? I mean, the first thing out of the gate is pay taxes. I was like, wow, okay.
Cool. I don't have to
Anyway,
pay taxes anymore.
we haven't obviously seen Love on the Spectrum. We obviously haven't. We, like, how many poetry winners are artistic? I mean, like, what? Okay,
Yeah.
whatever.
Yeah.
I'm just not. That aside, but that the description of autism was summed up in one person.
Hmm. Who has a worm in his brain, by the way. So, I'm sorry, I
Uh,
can't not just throw that
yeah,
out there.
yeah.
Yeah.
Like, we've been, something that Dana and I, like, really talk about repeatedly on our
Hmm.
podcast is nuance,
Yeah.
is spectrum, is individuality, and that the
Right.
spectrum is a wide one.
Yep.
And that in order for you to really capture autism accurately, you need to spend time in the weeds.
Hmm.
You need to spend
Yep.
time with the nuances, especially our adults who are getting diagnosed in adulthood,
Yeah.
right? And where they're really reflecting on their childhood, they're reflecting on their life, they're sharing their experiences.
Hmm.
This is what we're talking about. I think this is dangerous.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely.
I'm
Yep.
terrified of what's going to happen. I'm
Yep.
terrified, and I don't. I mean, I think
I
that
think because of the level of government that is
yeah,
coming from, that's what makes it the scariest, right?
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, the other piece too is, and I want to be careful here because there is a spectrum.
Hmm. Oh,
Autism
yeah.
is a
Yeah.
spectrum, and I
Yep.
don't think Dana and I spend a lot of time in the places where autism oftentimes is missed,
Hmm.
where someone's
Hmm.
saying, it's really are like highly verbal, very
Hmm.
intelligent people who are struggling with life, and people are like, what's the matter with you? Like, why can't you
Right.
get your together?
Right.
Right?
Right.
That we spend a lot of time there
Well,
because
that
yeah,
also is like the piece that he didn't really seem to not be aware of is that the last iteration of the DSM, and we've bashed the DSM on here, so that aside, Asperger's was pushed under there. So that would be more likely to be someone like you're mentioning, where people are
yeah,
like, "Oh, what's the scoop? What's going on with you?" And what the research shows too is there along that spectrum in terms of support needs as a DSM. I'm rolling my eyes for those of you that can't see me. I feel like I need to. It's like the caveat. Dana's eyes rolling. The support needs thing, which has some usefulness and then also is not great. But there's a recognition that there are just a bevy of co-occurring things that can happen that aren't autism per se, but when together fit this stereotype like he's talking about. So someone who has intellectual or cognitive impairment, let's say, that would be one version of an interaction thing. Someone who has significant GI tract issues, that might be an issue, right? So you can have these other kind of what I would, just for the sake of the explanation, would say like medical issues that can go along with that tend to be patterned because there's so many genes that contribute to this. If those five are turned on, just an example, this person has that and so on. But the literature even says those are co-occurring and they're not autism per se, but you can see those occurring at a higher rate with autism than they do in the general population. And that's a really important distinction. He's looking at folks that have all those together and omitting an entire population, which might be people that are in need of less supports, but nonetheless suffer greatly, to your
Yep.
point of folks that are like just having a hard time in life and can't figure out why. And then we assess them as autistic, and they're like, oh my God, I hear the angels singing. Now I get why I have such a hard time, myself included, right? So that sense of the nuance, there's a reason you and I always go to nuance. It's so important in this case. And if you don't pay attention, you don't know this field well enough to know how important and essential the nuance is. It's like a bull in a china shop. You know, it's like the 2-year-old that finds his father's gun. That's not going to end well, right?
Yeah.
It's just not going to
Yep.
end well. And it's terrifying, right? That sense of someone wielding this power and not getting it. And that, no, that's what incensed me right away. And when I texted it to you last night, that little bit of back and forth we had was you were feeling the same way, like, what the hell, right? I could say hell, right?
Yeah. I think I used different words, but it was close.
Yeah. Jeez.
Okay. For those of you that are in have an autism diagnosis in the system, please read all of the requests for a release of information that are coming to you. Like, please do that. I really don't know. To be quite honest, I feel like this is the wild, wild west, because I don't even know, like, for everyone that's been identified autistic in an IEP. I mean, I don't know how. I mean, there are educational privacy laws, but I don't know if that extends back up to the federal government. I don't know.
Yeah, well, let me explain, because I've been an IRB chair. I've done a lot of research. I know kind of what's supposed to happen and what makes this scary.
Dana, tell the audience what IRB is, because I think a lot of people
so IRB is an institutional review board, and what it is it's a stopgap measure to make sure that people that are doing research have this reviewed by a committee that knows what's called the Belmont Report, knows our code of ethics, and knows risk. So it assesses risk to participants in any given study. This was originally put in place, like I said, coming out of the Nuremberg trials out of Nazi Germany, because they were using human participants for things without consent. And then there were some other kind of seminal works in our field that led to this as well. People, if you're interested, look up the Stanley Milgram shock experiment, which is a little bit disturbing. But the Zimbardo prison experiment was another huge one that happened. That this took place on the Stanford campus, I think in the late 70s, maybe mid 70s, where he got a group of volunteers together and assigned half the group to being prison guards and half the group to being inmates, and then had them do that 24 hours, and it devolved into Gitmo looked really familiar. I'm like, oh, we've seen this one before. This happened in the Zimbardo prison experiment. So even in that situation, going into that, an unforeseen thing happening that was a huge risk to participants, it wasn't even him that stopped it. It was his girlfriend at the time, who became his wife, said, you need to stop this now or I'm calling the cops, right? So that put even another level of tightness on how much research you can do on human participants without their consent, right? Now, part of that is accessing databases, records, things like this, which I have done, everybody does in doing research. Yep. If you are going to, for example, I heard someone talking about him accessing the VA records, let's say, just at the VA. Fine. What happens is the VA doesn't de-identify all the data for them and then give it to them. They give them access to everything, but the researchers have a responsibility to keep the identified part of it confidential. So the VA would say to the government, yes, you can access these records, you can access them all, but you have to basically sign your life and blood as a researcher and through IRB not to tie these to in an identified way, right? That's the part that's scary. Now, sometimes you can do research where you can access a database and it's already de-identified. Like, if you can go and Google the National Institute of Health, and there are thousands of access. I have my students do this every year. There's access to thousands of data sets that are actual data sets that are out there on all kinds of stuff, but they're de-identified. There's no way you're going to know this person in Illinois who's 65, who drives a Cadillac and is autistic. There's no way you're going to be able to find that person, right? The scary thing is, from a government view, that they're doing is, are they going to know and do due diligence to de-identify this stuff? That's what's scary. Are they going to go into schools? Are those names going to be tied to those kids, and they aren't going to be protecting the name and the identification of those? That's what scared me about that ROI I saw, that release of information thing that person had posted, was them saying something like, and this happens all the time too. It's like, if you go to have treatment at a research hospital, if I were to go to University of Washington and have treatment there, who reads all that fine print when you're consenting to see the doctor? But when you go to a teaching hospital, everywhere in there says anything that happens to you in this hospital can be used for research, and you're consenting to use this for research. Now, a place like that, like UW, would be very careful to make sure that your identified information isn't tied to that, right? But we see this administration doing stuff that isn't best practice. I mean, we're seeing it with the deportations. We're seeing it with the war on trans folks that's not based in any reality that we know in our field whatsoever. That's what scares me. If this would have been, even the last administration, if this had been the last administration saying, we're going to do this big study, multi-year study, we're going to access all this stuff. By the way, if you'd like to participate and send us de-identified data, awesome, right? That'd be so different, because you'd know they're going to do it in a way that is best practice. I don't think that's going to happen this time, right? It feels more like Nazi Germany. It's really scary.
And is there even an IRB process? There's not going to be an IRB. There's not. I mean, like, IRB is, like, as you mentioned, is a stopgap measure, and it really is probably to protect.
Yeah, and probably not, because if he says he's going to have this done by September, to get a study like this through IRB would take about 3 months to get it through an IRB. So probably not, is my guess. Yeah. Because he says, I'm working for the government, I can do whatever I want, is basically what's happening here.
I don't even have words for this.
Yeah.
Again,
I do,
we have words for it, but then Gwen would have to spend the next hour just bleeping out, and then you guys wouldn't know anything in between, because it would just be one bleep after another bleep after another bleep.
Yeah.
I don't want to be alarmist. Like, I think, the strategy in these last few months has been to overwhelm people.
Yeah.
So that we just acquiesce, right? Like, and clearly, like, that's not what our intention is. Our intention is to say, hey, your data could be picked up here. Go to every measure you can to protect yourself and your data.
Yeah.
Just, if, and this is all in the, like, I think anytime the diagnosis is connected to you, they're primarily looking at autism. Because he's made it his mission to, quote unquote, cure it by September, or find out, why
find out what causes it.
By September, right? Do everything you can to protect your information. Really read those requests for releases. Really, like, don't just sign that stuff over. Be really careful. Do whatever you can to protect your information. Because I think the days of confidentiality and privacy, really, the other thing that disturbed me too, and I don't know how they're going to do this, is they're also going to collect information from smartwatches and smart devices.
Yeah. What the heck is that?
I don't know what this is. Like, Dana and I are responding to an article. Okay, so here we are, like, we're just being transparent.
Yeah, that's scary, because if you wear, like, a smartwatch, it can tie to your phone. So they can access that. The feds can access that anytime they want. I mean, they're supposed to have a reason to access it. But you're right. I forgot about that part of it. That's, what the hell?
Just be careful. You guys just be careful of your data, and just don't lie down. Like, let's not lie down.
That's, I think, the rally call is just to be aware and do what you can do, knowing that this is overwhelming. Right.
Yes, do
Yeah.
and get support from people. We don't know the answers to this. I mean,
Yeah.
Dana just read
Yeah.
this article last night, then sent it to
Yeah.
me, and then I just read the article, and I'm like, what? But
Yeah.
it, it definitely. I mean, it impacts our audience particularly.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Um, and so
Yeah.
we're worried. Like I'm
Yeah.
worried. I'm worried
Yeah.
about this, and I don't like the way that this is going down. It just
Hmm.
it feels pretty terrifying and oppressive and discriminatory, and
Hmm.
everyone's going to be lumped into one. I mean, we've been fighting so hard
Right.
to acknowledge that autism's a spectrum.
That's one of the rays of hope that I do have is if this had happened 10, 15 years ago, it might be a little
Hmm.
scarier. The fact that there's been so much advocacy and so many people in the know and so many people are versed in what's really going on in autism, that might be the difference maker, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. But just letting people know. I posted this on all of my Awake social media, and I also posted it on my private Facebook page because I just want my friends to be aware of this sort of thing, just so there's more, voices out there and people that have awareness of what's happening here, right? So I think
Yeah.
it's huge news. Yeah.
This is big. This is big stuff.
Yuck.
Okay, everyone. Oh my gosh. I'm just so, I mean, I
Yeah.
well, I mean, if you guys have any ideas, I mean, maybe it's like as a community we can help each other
Hmm.
protect your information and speak up. If you
Yeah.
have tangible, practical ideas for that, if you could put those in the comments for our community, I think that would be so
Hmm.
great. Like, how
Yeah.
do we help each other with protecting ourselves and having a
Hmm.
voice?
Yeah.
Like, how do we do both of those at the same time? We would
Yeah.
love your ideas on that. And
Yeah.
I think just a warning for people. I think Dana and I are going to continue to do more of these kinds of reactions
Hmm.
because it's impacting our community
Yeah.
very directly. And we're here for awareness and acceptance and advocacy. That's
Hmm.
this kind of the three pillars of what Dana and I really intended to do with our podcast.
That's right.
And we trying to do that in a very low key, casual kind of way, and have these conversations and bring the conversations to light. But like,
Yeah.
just heads up, like, if you're a little bit sensitive to political kinds of
Yeah.
content,
Yeah.
Dana and if things like this continue, we're going to be heading more in this direction,
Yeah.
more often, because we need to speak up.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, on
All right.
that
I need
note,
a nap now.
I, all
uh,
right, everyone. Well, be good to yourself, be good to others. And we will catch you in the next episode. Bye, everyone.
Hi, everybody.